Hello. First college football live show. Hi to our viewers that we have not, I guess, seen live from pre-recorded stuff. But as we told you guys, college football rankings, it is going to be our first live show with Matt. How you doing?
Ben, I am doing fantastic. The day has finally come. We are finally here for a massive celebration that only comes around once a year. And no, I'm not talking about your birthday. No, I'm talking about the college football rankings and how this is this is what we do. I mean, this is what we look at numbers, we react to numbers, and then we try and project numbers when in reality we realize that any of these teams at any time could be favored by 2 touchdowns and lose tomorrow because it's college football. So we can map this out. I remember a few years ago I mapped out Wake Forest to the playoff, to the 14 playoff, and then they lost back-to-back games to end the season. So listen. Nobody knows anything. We can all speculate. But yeah, I'm tremendously excited. And before we get into it, if you're new around here, I want to give a shout out to the YouTube audience. We've had a major spike in views the last week or so. So very happy to report that the first time within 24 hours, our recap, NFL show has reached, in 24 hours, reached 100 views. So I mean that is progress in the aggregate. So if you like what you see, if you're new around here for college football, this is what we do. So Ben, take it away.
Yes, this is exactly what we do. So for those who are not new around here, it's going to be a lot of the same that you guys are used to. A little bit of a condensed version on the recap and the preview, with the majority of the focus obviously being on the rankings. And if you are new around here, well, there you go. Rankings and then a condensed version of the recap and preview. So where else to start other than looking at the top 25 as a whole, and then we'll jump into kind of what the bracket looks like from there. But here's our current top 25 as of November 4th. A lot to react here. And ironically, the first team that kind of jumps off the page to me here is actually your team, Matt, being ranked all the way at 11. At one point in the season, they were the number 2 team ranked in the country. And then they had a really preseason number 1. And then they had a really rough couple of weeks here. But, somehow the Longhorns found themselves in the top 12, not quite in the playoffs, just due to, the ACC team all the way down there at 14 sneaking in. We'll get into that here in a second. But really, the Longhorns are the team that first catches my eye more than anything. Our thoughts on the Longhorns at 11?
Somehow, some way, I still feel slighted. I just don't know why Notre Dame is at 10. I just don't understand it. I thought this would be the week of the new rankings that the committee would finally look at Notre Dame and say, "Listen, we are giving we are just giving Notre Dame too much credit for losses, more so than wins." I get they have one top 25 win against USC. Well, now looking at it, that team is at 19. Texas is also a 2-loss football team, but they have 2 wins against 12 and 16. One of those against 12 on a neutral site by multiple scores, and then one of them the most recent weekend against Vanderbilt at 16. And you're probably saying, well, the difference is, one loss to A&M and one loss to Miami, and the other has the detrimental loss to Florida. Florida's 3-5 is just, I guess it's just so nasty. I mean, we just watched Georgia play them to 1 score. I get it. But this is, to me, I still am. if Notre Dame, like, we're at the point that I remember before the season, or not before the season, but like week 3, and they lose to A&M, and the talking point around it is if they get to 10-2, man, I don't think they control their destiny. They're at 6-2 and already in, so like they just need to keep beating who's in front of them, and Notre Dame's not just going to be in the playoff. They're going to host a game because this weekend, number 7 plays number 8, and with the way people rank teams, the loser of that game is going to go behind number 10. So I'm being like, and there's a built-in floor to BYU Texas Tech too, because they both beat Utah. So the lowest either one of them could go could be right behind Oklahoma. Maybe they, split up
Mhm.
Texas, Oklahoma. Maybe they're right behind Notre Dame. I don't know. But that is the number one fascination when you talk about Texas is that, I mean, Notre Dame is still up there, and Notre Dame like is not just like alive, but like alive and well.
Yeah, I mean Notre Dame last year and this year continues to be the team that benefits from this being the 12-team format more than any other team, considering that they don't have a conference championship to hold their hat on.
Mm-hmm.
And then last year with that awful NIU loss, and then this year opening up the season 0-2, and it seems like people had, despite those two early losses, for some reason or another, has always favored Notre Dame, which is still just again shocking. I think the committee, as you said, is probably more focused on having good losses than having ranked wins at this point, especially when the wins total up to be the same, which is I think kind of disgusting work
Mm-hmm.
in totality, which is just kind of gross. But then kind of the other teams that interest me and like kind of stand out are actually these two ACC teams that we see all the way down there at 17 and 18. We don't know what Georgia Tech would have been ranked prior to that loss, which we'll get into, later on in the show. But I do think it's fascinating that they're the one loss team and they're only one spot in front of Miami. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
just shows kind of what the committee thinks of them, despite the fact that they were an undefeated team going into last weekend,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of gross. And on the flip side of that too, I don't know, are we kind of already at a point where we're like, Miami, you're out unless you make unless you're in
No,
because of the ACC championship.
I think there's I think there's still a lot they need to go in play, but like you think about like they still have in theory a ranked Pitt team on their schedule, and I know Pitt plays Notre Dame, they play Georgia Tech, so is there a number next to Pitt's name at that time? I don't know. I will say they don't control their own destiny because you we talked about like how would strength of head to head matter. You look throughout this top 25 and you can find all kinds of head to head matchups being the tiebreaker. Alabama over Georgia, in which then Georgia over Ole Miss, Texas over Oklahoma. Both BYU and Texas Tech over Utah, but that one is kind of different because both of those teams have 0 loss or 1 loss, and Utah has 2 losses. Virginia
Yeah.
over Louisville. You get into USC over Michigan, just like now scanning, like Michigan over Washington. Like, so they were really, there is an emphasis on the head to head, victories, which should always
I
happen.
love.
It should always carry outside of 7-2 Miami and 6-2 or 6-2 Miami and 6-2 Notre Dame. They're separated by 8 spots. So again, I don't, much like Georgia Tech, the committee didn't think that highly of the Miami resume going into it, even though before the season we're looking at it going, wait a minute, they beat Notre Dame and they beat South Florida, who is like the runaway favorite to be, the G5 represent. They beat Florida State, they beat Florida, but you just look at the last few weeks. Even though they lost to 15th ranked Louisville and somehow still unranked SMU, the
Mhm.
Tennessee thing, I don't understand why Tennessee is over SMU, but hey, regardless, but SMU is a good football team, and yeah, they just did not feel highly enough of the Miami resume outside of the Notre Dame win, even though it looks pretty good.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I guess another question I have for you is where do you think this cutoff is in terms of this top 25 in terms of teams that you think realistically have a shot to make what at least at the time being is probably the top 10 is probably what you're going to have to reach considering that I mean we'll see how the ACC plays out and see if there's a top 12 ranked ACC team to begin with, but as of right now you need to be in the top 10 considering the ACC in group of 5. What do you think that cutoff is in terms of like teams you think can realistically still make that playoff? In my head right now, I think that cutoff is probably USC, and I think that's generous by saying that.
How
In my head,
crazy
I
do you
want to
want me to
say,
get?
oh gosh, it hit me.
I could argue Pitt, right?
You could argue Pitt. So you still think a team like, I mean,
Mhm.
Mizzou's just tough because you don't have
I
Pabula
could
and
argue Pitt
whatnot.
because of what I'm looking at on their schedule. What I'm staring at the wins that they could achieve, and Pitt is kind of a more so like they make the ACC title rather than
Yeah.
be an at-large 10-2 team because I think those two go hand in hand. But in realistic fashion, I'll move up a few spots. I'll go to Michigan because I look at Michigan and you think about their two losses are against ranked USC, ranked Oklahoma early in the season. They scheduled Oklahoma again. These things like this is me tooting the Texas horn, but it's like why Texas is higher than 8-1 Virginia? Because they scheduled Ohio State and they played them within the score. Like you can look at the two losses for Texas and say, "Ugh, they have two losses." Like Virginia only has one. Well, not all non-cons are created equal, and so you think about that side of it. And I think for Michigan, the two losses are not detrimental. They're not killers. Like at least in this moment, we never know how USC's season could turn at this point. But I just think about their Ohio State game. If they beat Ohio State, like this could be a catapult jump. If those were to happen. And like, by the way, I was looking at it today. Michigan 5-1 in the conference. There's a world where the game is for a spot in the Big Ten title game. Where I just saw today that odds got released for Ohio State and Indiana for the the Big Ten title game. So again, it's not locked up yet. Anybody like I'm just saying, if only there was a time for Ryan Day to lose to Michigan. Oh wait, it's only ever happened since he's been the head coach. So just keeping that in mind, I think Michigan at 21 would be the lowest I would go. I still like Iowa. Like I think Iowa has a real case, especially this weekend facing Oregon, because I'm not saying they're going to jump up to number 9 where Oregon is at if they beat them, but you know, Iowa's got, they still got Mississippi or not Mississippi, Michigan State and Nebraska, who has a backup quarterback now, with Raiola out. So and then USC. I knew I was missing one, but like so you throw in
Yeah.
Iowa. Iowa could get some wins here. They would finish on if they finish 10-2. I am projecting all of these teams as 10-2 if I'm predicting them to make the playoff. I, I
Yes.
I'm not going to predict any 9-3 teams, especially after last year and how the committee decided Alabama and SMU. They were really set and dug in their heels on saying Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss, you guys have 3 losses. You're out of here. If we need to make that decision this year, they will. But as of this moment, it's not a major factor yet.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's obviously the key when you're talking about these, lower teens to early 20 teams in terms of like, can they make it in? Obviously, there still probably is a chance for probably up to Michigan to still make it in if the shoe falls on the right foot and everything falls for them in a perfect manner. Um, it's it's still crazy too of all the teams that I'm looking at as well, that and rightfully so, that Virginia is at 14 going into
Mm-hmm.
the season. Like if you would have like told me that Virginia during the first college football ranking was going to find themselves as a top 15 team and as the best team as of right now in the ACC. Again, they're if the college football playoffs were to start today, they would be in right now. I just think that's it's kind of a testament to just I think how the college football season as a whole has gone. There's been a lot of things that you weren't really able to predict, which has found Virginia all the way up here at 14 in a kind of combination of them winning a whole lot of games that people didn't really give them a chance to win, but here we are. If and this is again, it's hard to rank, but do you think Virginia is the best ACC team? I mean, in terms of ranking, they are. But do you think if Virginia played Louisville now, they played Georgia Tech now, they played Miami now, do you think that they would come out on top, or do you think those three other teams have a chance in terms of what we've seen on the field, throwing the rankings aside? Do you think that they're the best ACC team, or do you think there's one of these three other teams that we just talked about that is probably better?
I
And SMU.
will right now because I think there is a strength in continuing to win. I think there is a strength in continuing to find a way. I think we could all look at it and say, you can't keep getting away with this, but everybody's got a blemish in this conference, and that's why like I'm kind of excited to dig into this conference for a second here because this
Yeah.
was a this was a conference that could be a chaos creator in terms of wait a minute, the ACC is kind of just like a one bid league at this point in the season. Like early in the season, it was like, oh, Florida State could make it. Clemson was a massive favorite. Miami could be interesting, and then it just turned into, well, it's just going to be Miami, and then Miami lost. And then Georgia Tech was all the way up there. Virginia was all the way up there. And now Georgia Tech loses. And so now we're all the way back into November saying, this is probably whoever wins the conference is the only represent, right? And so I think that is interesting in terms of looking at where we started the season, looking at it, and where the ebbs and flows of a season go. But to answer your question, I would take Virginia on the field against any of these teams. Not that I feel good about Virginia, but more so I just don't feel confident in anybody else. And I also have something on the ACC. I I love. I have something on the ACC. I don't know if the odds have changed because odds are obviously subject to change. But Ben, if you had to predict, I don't know if you know this, who who is the favorite to win the ACC conference?
Oh gosh. Because you are asking that question, I'm going to say it's probably a team like SMU at this point. If you were to ask me right now who I think is going to win the ACC, I still probably lean towards that third ranked ACC team in Georgia
Mm-hmm.
Tech, just because I still like the fight that this team offers. But based off of the way you just asked it, I'm gonna guess in terms of odd wise SMU. But I'm interested to hear what this answer is.
It's the Duke Blue Devils.
Whoa! Isn't that something?
The 5-3 blue Duke Blue Devils who have losses to Tulane and Illinois, who also noticeably Those two teams aren't on this list. So like you think about that and where like obviously Vegas could be wrong, but it just shows you what this conference looks like right now. This conference has 6 contenders to make the title game, and I'm not even counting Miami, who's 2-2. I think Miami ship sailed last weekend, picking up their second loss in the conference. I just don't see a world where, with all these teams with 0 or 1 loss at this point in the season, and rarely any tiebreakers for Miami, they have a shot to make that title game. I think they just need everybody else around them to kind of cannibalize around and like they can make the you know they can make the at-large bid because you can make an argument if they finish strong, their Final Four strong, and Notre Dame kind of tempers off. You could, come back around. I don't think there's anything against the committee coming back around and saying, hey, all right, well, now we've seen some good football with Miami. Like, we could get back to this head-to-head tiebreaker kind of feeling. But obviously the committee has shown that they're not just going to override the tiebreaker, the head-to-head, with, like, 4 spots. Like, if Miami was 14 right now, they'd be 14. They would not just all of a sudden get 5 spots bumped because they beat Notre Dame.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny that you say that because we, in terms of Duke specifically, we don't know what that ranking process looks like in terms of everyone outside of the top 25 in terms of like the official college football playoff rankings. But if you mosey on over to the AP poll and you try to find Duke, they're nowhere to even be found. Like they're not even receiving a vote to get into the top 25, which is funny. But again, there's still a realistic path even for them to find themselves in the college football playoffs. And then kind of the one last thing that I have before you can finish off and anything else that stood out to you is there, despite what we all say about the Big 12, there might be a realistic path that we see 3 Big 12 teams in the college football playoffs. Because if you consider like Utah wins out, and let's say Texas Tech beats BYU, then you have a 1-loss BYU team, a 2-loss Utah team, and a 1-loss Texas Tech team. And in that situation where all of these teams, where BYU, Texas Tech have 1 loss and Utah has 2, there's a real scenario where we're now seeing 3 teams pushing for a top 10-ish spot. I'll say 11, a top 11 spot to make the college football playoffs, which again goes back to this just being like one of those bizarro seasons from college football. Because going in the year, we kind of treated the Big 12 the way that we are treating the ACC, where it's like, well, you get the champion and that's all you get. And this says a lot for the Big 10 and SEC people that are like, no. We just need to give like 5 at-large bids or 4 at-large bids to each of these teams, and then 1 for the others. And again, that is saying a lot, considering that there is a very real and possible chance that we see 3 Big 12 teams in the college football playoffs. Your thoughts on the Big 12 as a whole?
Yeah, I mean Utah being ranked in the likes of Texas and Oklahoma right behind them and over all those 1-loss ACC teams that we keep mentioning, fascinating. But you argue what they've done in terms of I think they're much like the Notre Dame of it all. Like it's more so the impressive losses, losing to number 7 and number 8 and kind of picking up wins against everybody else. I think them killing Cincinnati was exactly what they needed to show the committee that they are a good football team. They have some wins along here that they have killed some teams, and the only game that they felt outmatched was the Texas Tech game. So again, I 13 over Virginia and Louisville, I would not have predicted that, but it's where we stand, and you aren't wrong talking about Utah. They're on a bye this week. You're telling me, Baylor, Kansas State, Kansas to finish off a season, to reach that double-digit win total, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
No, it definitely is not. Um, any other thoughts that you have when looking at the top 25 before we kind of shoot on over to the bracket?
The G5. So we talked about this in passing. Memphis is now out of the top 25 like rankings. So they could obviously earn into it. They have a game this week. If they lose that game this week, we're staring at the American Conference likely cannibalizing itself in terms of the losses, and it would then kind of shift over to either one loss, San Diego State, or one loss, James Madison. This is a weird season because I don't think it's going to bring a lot of pleasure or joy to many fan bases or teams that right now the team that's out is the Texas Longhorns because they have to grant a non-ranked Memphis into the college football playoff. I last year it was nice and easy. And we get a Boise and they're undefeated outside of the game against Oregon who finishes number 1. So it was just nice and easy. Plug in Boise State, 11-1 conference champion. They have a Heisman contender. It's just so easy and not so fast. Not every G5 team is created equal. Not every season has a UCF 2017. Not every season has a Boise State of last year. Sometimes this does happen. And so you look at that and you look at the American right now, just plenty of 2-loss teams, especially, you look at or just a ton of 1-loss in conference right now. Like Navy is sitting at 5-1. They're the highest right now because they've played the most American Conference games. But the only 1-loss teams left are Memphis and North Texas. And North Texas lost to South Florida. If I had to guess, I bet South Florida is higher ranked than North Texas. Like I mean obviously we can't see that here, but just on, the analytical rankings and even like resume wins wise, I would expect South Florida to be higher
In
right
terms
now.
of
So
AP poll, which take it with a grain of salt, because again, at the end of the day, it's an AP poll, and we've discussed in length the issues that the AP poll brings.
yeah.
But in terms of just the vote getters in the AP poll, or North Texas is slightly higher than what you would see in South Florida. North Texas has 27 votes compared to South Florida's 23 votes. But again,
Oh, yeah.
take that take that all of that with a grain of salt. Didn't mean to cut you off there though.
No, that's outstandingly close. Comedically close as we're discussing these teams, and with the way the committee ranks head to head, I bet they would have South Florida higher. So that's where I'm interested in how this final, like if Memphis separates itself from the pack, I'm not going to argue you. I'm really not. If they finish this season beating Tulane, they face ECU, and then I think Thanksgiving they face Navy. So like they have a prime time spot in front of everybody, saying like, "Hey, here we are, 11-1." Yep, absolutely. But if this conference continues to cannibalize itself, I think this conference takes itself out of the equation and puts it in the hands of an 11-1 Sun Belt team who lost by 14 to Louisville, or a San Diego State team who is in the Mountain West, and I think of the Mountain West is not what we kind of cracked it out to be prior to the season.
No.
You look at some of the teams in the Mountain West right now, like UNLV was supposed to be a power. They're 2-2. Like it's really San Diego State, Boise State, and Boise State has the loss to USF that kind of eliminated them early. And you think about San Diego State's loss is a 3-possession loss to Washington State, who just lost to Oregon State. So, by transitive property, that's a pretty crazy, step-by-step process. So I'm just interested to see how the group of 5 shakes up, because I I can tell you right now, as a fan of the Longhorns, if they split a 1-1 with the Georgia and the A&M game, and they're 9-3, and we have to hold Texas out at 9-3 in favor of one of these G5 teams that we just know isn't good, or at least knows shouldn't be in the top 12,
Yeah.
and you know how I know they shouldn't be in the top 12 because they're going to be at like 24 on this ranking, and we're going to just validate 13 spots. I get why it's implemented. I get why it's a thing, but that's something to think about. So, yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's we will not know in terms of the college football poll. Um, but outside of Memphis on the AP poll, by a wide margin, that other group of five team would be JMU. Again, looking over, I hate using the AP poll as that measuring stick, but it's really the only thing that we can.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Memphis is at 22. So again, they're kind of your favorites right now in terms of group of five. But then outside of them, it would clearly be James Madison getting 53 votes. And then you see, then at that point, it's like San Diego State, North Texas, and South Florida all separated by a total of 7 votes, with San Diego State having 30, North Texas having 27, and South Florida having 23, which really, again, goes to show you like how tight that group of five race is right now if a team like Memphis isn't able to really complete the rest of the season. So again, it's I think we might be in for one of those kind of tough conversations about like, well, does a group of five team deserve to be in it every year? Again, it's kind of like gross, but on the other hand of it, like I think this is just like a way for the NCAA as a whole to like save face to prevent something like Cincinnati like the year before they ended up getting in, or something like Central Florida. And I think it's just like a way for them to save face so people can't be like, oh, look at that, a group of five teams should have made it, look how far they could have gone. Which again, what are we doing? Anyone who watches college football will really be able to tell you that like they're not playing the same football. They're just not playing the same level of football. And again, we had seen that with a group of five team last year that was as dominant and deserved to be in Boise, just not even being able to play. So now what do you do when there isn't a dominant team like that, just getting the floor mopped? So it's just it's interesting. But I'm going to leave this up for just a second, and then we will also. Oh, where did it go? I will also pull up our bracket in the way that will look as well very, very quickly here as I get this loaded. Am I able to do two? I am not. That is all right. So as Matt had mentioned, it is actually our top 10 teams getting in terms of the AP ranking or the college football ranking, plus your Virginia that finds themselves at 14 sneaking in because they're the ACC champion. And then you see little old Memphis fighting off against Georgia, which again, regardless of who that group of five team is, do you really think any of them stand a chance against whoever the fifth ranked team in the country is, whether that ends up being Georgia, Ole Miss, heck, even a BYU?
I know USF would make it fun.
I mean, do you think that just in terms of like pure watching value, I think USF probably is going to be the team that makes it the most fun just because of everything that Brown can offer at the quarterback position in terms of his scrambling and throwing and whatnot. And again, they've already proven that they can be a I want to watch how I word this. I don't want to say a high level Power Four school because Florida is anything but a well regarded, I'll say, Power Four school,
like a very
in
capable
Florida.
program.
Yes, a capable program, I think, is the nicest way we could use to describe what Florida is right now. But yeah, this is what our bracket looks like. I think for the most part, I really love all of these matchups, and I don't think outside of that Georgia Memphis game, in theory, I don't think we would get any like crazy runaway games that we had seen
Oh yeah.
last year, maybe aside from Ole Miss and Virginia. But like Texas Tech, Oregon, cinema. So I would pay lots of money to watch that game. Same with BYU and Notre Dame. Um, Again, I think you might be seeing a little bit more of that drop off from that first round to the second round, which is funny because last year every single team that got a bye ended up losing. So I'm going to be interested to see if that storyline will then translate into this year, kind of the way that it does in baseball, whether or not a bye is actually a good thing for you or a bad thing for you. But I really do think, again, these top four teams are probably a step above
Yeah.
everyone else. And I think you're more likely to see more of those blowouts in this second round than you were in the first round compared to last year. But any of these matchups kind of stand out for you that you're like, yes, that would be a lot of fun to watch.
I think Notre Dame going to Provo would be interesting. Just the I don't think Notre Dame's performed particularly awesome on the road outside of their Arkansas blowout. So now going on the road against a top 10 opponent would be fascinating to watch. But I keep in mind, I mean, not to be Mr. Buzzkill, but it's like how many of these matchups do you think hold firm? It's like over, half a game. I think we have so much that is going to happen that it's like I don't want to get fixated on matchups until
No.
like the week before. But my biggest takeaway is like just how you mentioned the top four. Like, are we gonna have another similar to last year and similar for years to come? Uh, the two teams in the Big Ten championship and the two teams in the SEC championship aren't going to be playing for anything but pride on championship weekend because they're all already going to be like solidified as the bye teams. Like this is a real question, and this is why the SEC has talked about how, yeah, we could implement our own little 4-team playoff weekend where it's like we have two games on this is why like with the auto bid system that they tried to create was we'll have two games, 4 teams, three will play six. The two top teams will get buys into the at large, and then 3 will face 6 in the SEC standings, and 4 will face 5 in the SEC standings. The winners of those games then get into the college football playoff. So it's a way to keep, conference championship tradition weekend like alive in terms of like these games still matter, folks. Where now it's like if A&M plays Alabama right now, like even if Alabama loses to A&M, they're not going to fall behind Georgia because Georgia has, they have the head to head on the road in Athens against them. So like that's
Mhm.
what I'm fascinated about. If those big money conference championship games are just all of a sudden like, wait a minute, uh, this doesn't matter at all. Like it'll still matter for like the Big 12 and the ACC, and obviously for the whatever G5 teams are in the hunt, but the two biggest moneymakers would be sitting there saying like, we'd rather not play this game at all, like because we're gonna get a bye anyway. So it's interesting to see how that kind of. There's still just so many kinks with the 12-team playoff that needs to be kind of wrung out.
Yes. Well, and I am interested too, again, the way to see how those conference championships play out because this year I think is pretty straightforward because a team like Alabama could lose to Texas A&M and still hold their spot firm simply because they have that tiebreaker against Georgia. But let's say Alabama does beat Texas Tech, and let's say Alabama even smokes Texas Tech. Let's say there's a world right now looking at the rankings. Let's say this is 5-6 weeks from now. If Alabama smoked Texas Tech, let's say they beat them by 3 possessions, does that then hurt Alabama or A&M to a point where they find themselves getting dropped in the rankings and getting overtaken by a team that didn't even play and just benefit from the fact that Alabama or A&M got smoked? Like, could we realistically see a world again? Alabama smokes A&M, and A&M drops out of the top 4, and then you see a team like Georgia then take that spot. I'm just interested to see like how the committee would rank these teams, and if these non-conference championship teams might have a possibility of benefiting from not playing in a conference championship. But again, there only time will tell. There's a lot of college football still yet to be played. Yep. Again, these will not be our final rankings.
Yes, I mean some teams still have a third of their season.
Yeah, exactly. So it's still still a lot of football to be played. That kind of slingshots us right into the beautiful week that Matt, of all people, had watching college football last weekend. There's 5 games here that I think are worth a mention, 3 that we'll spend a little bit more time on. But we'll kind of kick it off with, again, the great weekend of college football you had. And I'll discuss both of these games very briefly, and then I'll let you go in depth a little bit more, and then I'll follow through. We saw Texas. Again, I continue to not be able to get it right when picking Texas and Vandy in terms of just who they're playing and whatnot. But we saw Texas end up beating Vandy 34-31. Man, did Vandy fight back. They made it a lot closer than what it probably should have been. And then on the flip side, continuing the train of Matt just having a great college football weekend, NC State takes down the Yellow Jackets, 8 ranked Georgia Tech, again, which we see fall now at this point to 48-36. And I have my thoughts on the game, but you being a fan of both, tell us your thoughts on how that the watching and the views went on Saturday.
The Texas game was a phenomenal start because it was the one play Wingo touchdown, much like the Mississippi State where there's a little orbit motion. But I thought the game plan of Texas, this is a week ago we're getting announcements on the weekend of Sark's thinking about the NFL. Sark's thinking he got in his bag, man, play calling this game. I thought the way that they got the ball out, the way that everything just flowed within the offense, the offensive line reshuffling into the 5 that we had was awesome. And I thought Arch Manning was great. Again, a lot of people were pointing out most of his yardage was coming from after the catch. That's what happens when the ball is thrown within 10 yards of line of scrimmage. But the biggest thing with Arch is, we think back to the Ohio State game, is he was inaccurate on a drag route. So now he's now he's accurate on the short routes, and it doesn't matter. I just think it's fun to watch this team as a whole grow, and where this team was supposed to be. This is the season I kind of expected. Guess what? I predicted them to lose to Florida before the season. I predicted them to lose to Ohio State before the season. This isn't surprising to me that this was a young team coming together and needed to figure out one step at a time, figure out how to put one foot in front of the other and move forward. And now they're playing their best football in November, and that's why they're the 11th ranked team in the country. And then NC State, I said it on the show before. You make all your decisions, give me one game, and they did. They were phenomenal. Again, this exactly how NC State could win a football game is how they won it, and it was, we need to score more than them. And it was as simple as this, it came down to NC State converted touchdowns inside the 15-yard line, and
Mm.
Georgia Tech didn't. I think it's that simple. Haynes King had an unbelievable stat line. I think he had 400 yards, 100 rushing, multiple touchdowns both through the air and the ground. But I thought the biggest stealer of the show was backup running back Duke Scott coming in for Hollywood Smothers and having almost 200 yards on this leaky Georgia Tech defense. Again, Georgia Tech, one of those ACC teams, they were fighting with fire most of the season. You think about like if an offsides was called in the Wake Forest game, Wake beats them. Wake beats them, and they have the one play, the fumble touchdown against Duke that kind of sets the tone in that one. So finally, on one of these road ACC games, Georgia Tech could not get away with it.
Yeah, in terms of the Georgia Tech NC State game, man, that defense was just it was a leaky pipe. They couldn't stop anyone. It seems like, despite again Haynes King doing what we're so used to, kind of trying his best to absolutely just will this team into winning this game, there wasn't really much he could do because their defense was so trash. And like I hate to say it, like that's a harsh way to put it, but that's in reality exactly how it was. When you let again a backup running back run for basically 200 yards on you, and CJ Bailey is turning around going 24 of 32 with 240 yards and 2 touchdowns, it doesn't really matter what Haynes King is doing
Yeah.
on the other side of the football because your defense just blows. um, Again, I continue to say it. I think any NC State fan really is coming to gripes with it now, especially after this game. Really, NC State fans, enjoy the time you have with CJ Bailey for the rest of the season, because this kid is going to hop in the portal and he is going to get lots of money to go somewhere and play. I hate to say it, but at a higher level of football, at a much bigger brand. And then again, on the flip side, the other game there, um, again, it just takes time. We knew Texas was a young team. We knew it was going to take time for this team to kind of congeal and then figure their way out. And we're finally seeing it. I think last week was not this game, but the game prior was that really big stepping stone and kind of the turning point for Arch Manning, at least in terms of this season, where we're starting to finally see stuff click. And again, it translated well. And as you said, there are a lot of people that are like, well, a lot of it's, yards after the catch and whatnot. Who cares? He's getting the ball where it needs to go. It does not matter. It's efficient. It works. You can't knock the kid because he's finding the right places to put the ball.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that game ended up being a lot closer than what you probably would have liked to see. Let me see what it was. I ended up turning that game off.
Vanderbilt ended up pushing the +3, and they almost got the onside kick. It rolls out of bounds, saves the game, and I it was 34-10 at at fourth quarter start, and Vanderbilt ended up scoring 21 points and had double the amount of yards in the fourth quarter alone than they did in the first 3 quarters. So again, like that's one of those scores that's just going to look deceiving. And again, back to our rankings, because it always makes it back. Like if that score holds at 34-10 and Notre Dame beats Boston College 25-10, Texas is probably number 10 and Notre Dame's probably the first team out. But that's not what happened. The guys were thinking about the bye week, all right? They were thinking about the essays they got to write. They were thinking about Georgia. I get it. It happens. I wanted them to finish strong. They didn't finish as strong as you would like. What was it? I think Stowers had like a 70-yard touchdown where he just like was wide open, and I didn't like that. Sark talked about how with Taff out, Jelani McDonald went out, uh, Jalen Gilbo went out. Towards the end, Xavier Filzame, who's the backup safety, he went out with this one. So like they were just in the secondary getting nuked a little bit there, and glad it took to the fourth quarter when there was a 3-score lead for it to not really bring so much effect. Like if it was a 17-point game, they would have won the game. So good thing it was 24.
Yes. Well, and before we move on to the next game, let me ask you. I want to judge your confidence, I guess, in this Texas team. Was there any point as the fourth quarter started winding down that you like were holding your breath, that you were like, "Oh crap, this this might be happening," or were you just like sitting back and you're like, "Nah, the Longhorns got this."
I just started chuckling at all of it because like after the big play touchdown, I was like they just can't play they can't play a boring football game. They can't win boringly. And then all of a sudden like the onside kick's coming up, and I'm like I just watched Parker Livingston like on the hands team get the last one. Like I'm we're fine, and then it like dribbles out a little bit. I think from that time of when you realize he didn't recover it from it going out of bounds, it was the only time confidently that I was like, "Oh no. Like if they get this ball, they're going to score and win the football game, and this is going to be like this is redemption for the Mississippi State, win kind of thing." Like so but that didn't happen. So we don't have to talk about it.
We don't. All right. Moving on to the final kind of like big game that I think is worth mentioning, and then we'll kind of again speed through those last two games. Miami. They end up losing to SMU, a game that you kind of teased a little bit. You're like, it might happen. They end up losing in overtime to SMU. And man, again, we through the first couple weeks of college football, we're like, all right, this might be a different Carson Beck. Like, has he turned the page? Has he gone to this new program? Has it kind of lit a fire underneath him? Well, we've gotten the answer to that over the last 3-4 weeks now. No, Carson Beck is gonna continue to be Carson Beck. And really, I don't want to say the funny thing about it, but the question I have is like, I don't know if this kid's ever gonna take accountability. Like, we saw the same exact response, basically the same exact response in this loss that we saw in the Louisville loss, where they were asking him about it, and he was like, I'm just operating the play that the coach has called. Buddy, you missed the throw. You were the one who's throwing the Don't give me that BS answer. Like I don't know. Carson Beck continues to I don't know, vindicate how it felt about him going into the season over the last 4 weeks. And it's just it's sloppy football down the stretch when you kind of need him the most to operate and do what you need from him. He tends to shut down, and we've seen that over his career at Georgia, and we're now seeing it in these couple games when he's playing ACC competition where it matters the most. He just shuts down and is virtually incapable of making the plays. And again, that seems really harsh, but incapable of making the plays that he needs to in crunch time. But your thoughts on Miami as a whole, Carson Beck? I know we talked about Miami a little bit already, but your thoughts on the game?
I mean, it's a trickle down effect at the U because you talk about the Beck interview after the game. Like Cristobal had something similar where he was like blaming refs and blaming referees for the game, when in reality, you should be going up to that podium and saying, "Listen, we just lost to a team that in the 2 years they have been in this conference have lost one regular season game, and it happened by 1 point last weekend." So, like, you easily could have gone up there, and I know nobody is in the mode of like politicking in that point in time, but it just makes you come off as a loser, a sore loser of like, It, oh, these outside factors. It's like you scored, 10 points in each half. There was no like dominant Miami at all this game, and this is still a team that I'm like, yeah, I think they have some of the best trench play in all of football, and in honestly, even the stats bear that out a little bit. Like, SMU finished with 23 total rushing yards, and Miami finished with 159 on 4 yards a carry. So, like,
Hmm.
I mean, you could still even point to those and say that. But overall, it comes down to sometimes there's one team that has a difference maker at quarterback and the other doesn't, and that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, and hey, speaking of just different makers at different positions, I mean, Rhett Lashley gets a contract extension for two
Yep.
more years, making a top 10 highest paid head coach in college football, and then immediately rewards the boosters and that entire athletic program by handing them a ranked win against an ACC opponent. Continuing just being like, yes, you made the right decision. Which then, again, him getting that contract extension really has some overarching effects on the college football landscape as a whole in terms of coaching shuffles. Because that's just another one of those coaches um, with Rule and Sig and now Rhett, kind of all these guys that were projected to take these quote unquote better jobs that are opening up now kind of staying put, which again creates another one of those trickle down effects. And I'm really interested to see how that plays out, and the coaching search continues to just be one of those really big topics looming over college football as a whole. But moving on to just the last two games, again, games that we have now already talked about when talking about the rankings at this point. Um, Utah just smokes Cincy. It wasn't really a game. They won 45-14. There goes that dominant, just shows how
Sorsby had a
dominant.
pretty Sorsby stat line. Did you see it?
Yes. It just, do you have the stat line in front of you?
He finished with 11 for 33, for 220 yards, a touchdown, a pick. Didn't really, he had like a pretty nice run, if I'm not mistaken,
Mm-hmm.
in this one.
Yes.
But yeah, it reminded me of. Let me find the Nebraska game. The Nebraska game was 13 for 25 for 69 yards. So, uh, the
I
completion
knew it
percentage
was in
was much
there.
worse. But hey, the yards. But yeah.
Uh,
Hey, going
I
to
knew
Rice
it was
Eccles
in
at
there.
night, man. Ooh, there was a reason that number was 10.
Yes, exactly. It just, again, they smoke them. Continues to kind of again show even the difference within conferences between these high level teams and these used to be group of five teams now moving into the power four. But again, they smoke them. And then the other game that I thought was worth mentioning was like, hey, OU, like they might be able to actually finally beat some real competition. That was kind of our big question mark. Like, outside of Michigan, have we really seen them have like a win that we're like, yes, that's a good win, a solid win against a good team? And that was again kind of the big question going into this Tennessee game. It was a semi-close game. OU ends up winning 33-27. But again, they win this game and they're kind of able to push that narrative at least for the time being a little bit down the road, saying like, no, can we can beat these teams. I still think there's a lot for them to prove. One game doesn't solidify them in terms of any means, but again, at least for the time being, they're able to push that narrative down the road. But any thoughts on those two games, or any games that I missed before I swing it over for you for the preview?
I mean, OU specifically, they found a run game, man. They have found a player specifically too in the run game, in Xavier Robinson. Like the last 2 weeks, he's had over 100 yards. over 7 yards a carry in both of those games. He's popped a huge run in both of those games. This one, I seals the deal. But I mean, it comes down to, Joey Aguilar putting the ball on the turf and R. Mason Thomas running down the field, stiff arming all the way down the field, pulls a hammy halfway, doesn't play again, but scores the touchdown. And from that point on, it's weird because Tennessee moved the ball through the air pretty
Yes.
effectively against an Oklahoma defense that is respected, but just overall couldn't finish when needed to, and OU is able to establish a run game down the stretch, and you just think about some little mini moments throughout a game where it's like the interception right before half, and all of a sudden that's just 3 free points to OU and their kicker who wears shorts. That so
Oh
and
God.
just but yeah, I mean just being able to find that player in the run game, and even if we have the problems with the offensive line, finding a difference maker in the run game for them outside of what Mateer does in chaos mode, and Mateer had a good rushing game, and I thought he was better throwing the football down the field than Ole Miss, but still, I mean OU finally gets one of those wins that they have been asking for.
Yes.
And Tennessee's knocked out.
Gone. They're done. 3 losses. You can't justify a 3-loss team at this point with the landscape of college football, as we had previously discussed. But we'll kick it over to you to kind of close the show out with our previews and a couple games to look forward to in this, I don't want to say weak Saturday because you never know what happens in college football on any given Saturday, but a lesser schedule than what we've been accustomed to over the last couple weeks.
I am really excited to watch College Game Day because they are going to be in Lubbock. Texas Tech versus BYU. Texas Tech is major favorites. I know, but I hate it with all my heart that this game is at 11. I cannot stand that because this is a game, this is a place that deserves the night experience. I am a Texas fan, but even watching that 2008 when Texas Tech, the Mike Leach era, has that game, has the Crabtree moment, that place lost their minds. This is a place that wants this to be good. And they've been good in basketball too. So it's just like you want this to be good. And now Texas Tech makes all the investments that they do. David Bailey and Jacob Rodriguez is he a top 10 player in the sport right now? Like, is he a Heisman contender? If he takes over a game like this, that's a Heisman player. Like that is something where it's like he's not going to win it. But if he's fourth, put him in New York, man. I think it would be fun. I think it would be just a nice reminiscence of this season for Texas Tech because I think myself included, I doubted this. I didn't believe that you could just go out, spend a ton of money, and find great players, and it would just all come together as a team. I thought it would more so look like maybe not the catastrophic Florida State incident last year, but a Florida State in terms of listen, if we become 4-2 again at the midway point, does this team quit on them? And they haven't, and they've gone through all their ups and downs. And then you look at the other side because there's 2 teams playing in this game. BYU continues to be an unbelievable story. Kalani Sitake a few years ago with this program should have been fired, and now he's back. They're 8-0. Oh, by the way, they have to, their quarterback has to leave because of honor code. So they say, well, our best option is a Stanford transfer freshman quarterback who wears 47 in Bear Bachmeier, and he's been anything anything but a disappointment, man. Like, he's been phenomenal. And I'm so incredibly excited to see these 2 teams play. I think we talked about it in the rankings. I think even one of these teams losing this game, they should still probably be in. If Texas Tech loses as a 10-point favorite at home, though, it does put them in question more so than BYU. I'm just hoping for a phenomenal game, and neither team get blown out because I think these two teams are legit, and I love watching them play.
Absolutely, yeah. I think again, despite my early reservations on the BYU team, they continue to make me kind of put my foot in my mouth. And again, I think this is really a chance for them to kind of uh, put their stamp on college football as a whole. Like if they
Hmm.
can go in Lubbock and say like, no, we're beating who pretty much consensus everyone believes is the best Big 12 team, even despite the fact we are the one team that's actually undefeated going into this game. Um, I think if they can do that again, they will put their kind of stamp, and I don't want to say lock up their spot because again, you never really know how the season plays out. But I think
If
if
they
they
win, if they win this one, they would be as close of a lock to the conference title game as you can be. I'll say that.
exactly again they if they win this one, you can pretty firmly and confidently say that, like, at least at the bare minimum, as you said, make the conference, you'll play, I almost said playoff game, conference championship game here. But again, on the flip side of that, it maybe took a couple weeks since, post injury for Morton to kind of figure it out, kind of where he was before, but now he's kind of right back to where he was. I know that there was one point in the season where you're like, Will Hammond, maybe he offers something to this team that Morton doesn't. But again, Morton continues to get the job done. Again, it's probably easy when you're throwing to the targets and guys that he has. But it goes back to the conversation that we had about Arch. Like, who cares? You're getting the job done, and your defense is continues to be one of the better defenses in all of college football. Um, and just as I said with BYU, you win this game, and you're right there, pretty much in the mix, almost guaranteeing yourself a conference championship game at the bare minimum here in the Big 12. I don't know if I want to take Texas Tech to cover, but as the listeners probably know at this point, I'm kind of a closeted Texas Tech fan. I don't know how I've found myself in this situation, but I think Texas Tech will just have too much firepower, especially on the defensive side of the football, and kind of just overwhelm the aforementioned Bear Bachmeyer.
Yeah, L.J. Martin, the running back for BYU, looks to be, the expected to play is the quote. And whenever you see that, I mean, the guy's going to play. He left the game against Iowa State. I mean, that's the backbone of this team: being able to run the football, being able to push you between the tackles. And Texas Tech is really good at taking that away. So again, in Lubbock, I think I'm gonna lay the points with Texas Tech. Don't love it. I think
No.
laying 10 or more points in any rivalry spot is hard to do, but just the atmosphere, the energy of it all, and just the overwhelming nature that this could create because they have such a great front four, man.
Yes.
I'm gonna take Texas Tech in this one. I still believe they're the best team in this conference, even after the Arizona State loss. They've proven me right, I believe, so far. I think they were on sleepy watch last weekend against Kansas State, and they handled it perfectly. Uh, they slept walk through the first, 20, 25 minutes, and then just
Yes.
ransacked Kansas State. So that's what I expect good teams to do, and I think this is a really good team. Then we move on to the 2:30 window, which we have two games here. Oregon travels to now 20th ranked Iowa. Iowa was unranked in the AP going into tonight, so now this matchup looks much sexier on with the little numbers next to it. This is the spot for Oregon that I think it's been all season for any team this season going into Kinnick. Is not a fun place to play. They played Indiana within a score, and not 20-15. The safety kind of props it up by 5, but still played them within a score. Indiana only was able to score 20 points in this exact spot. Like this game was at 2:30, I believe, that time too.
Yes.
Oregon. The last time we saw Oregon, no, it wasn't the time they were having 750 yards against Rutgers. It was Dante Moore leaving the game against Wisconsin and them really, really struggling to score. So I think our last impression of Oregon is not impressive, where Iowa hasn't lost a game since that Indiana game, and they've just been chugging along. They've really committed every resource possible into the run game, making that run game as dominant as possible. And both of these teams are coming off a bye, so no one's got the advantage there. But just excited to see how my guy Gronowski in these big spots performs.
That continues to I think be my biggest question with Iowa as a whole, but then obviously even more specifically in this game. Does Iowa in their passing attack have enough to hang in these games?
Mhm.
Again, they're able to hold off a little bit because they just have a defense that is going to take it to you every single time you step foot on the field. But it continues to be like they haven't really figured out a whole lot in this passing game. Again, we've mentioned it numerous times at this point when talking about Iowa that like you go out and you get Mark and you expect him to like change this passing game. And he has like not even 1,000 yards. He has a complete 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio with 4-to-4. And that's kind of the big question that again I will continue to have with Iowa. When you need it the most, can they move the ball down the field through the air to compete with these teams that have these explosive offenses? I mean that's kind of the reason why that like IU ended up winning that game when they played. Like IU was able to pass the ball when it mattered the most, i.e. at the end of the game with Eliza Surratt. Again, the missed field goal kind of helps with that, and I don't want to get too deep
Yeah,
into it,
yeah.
but uh, it continues to help when teams are able to pass and Iowa is not able to do such. Not that I think this is going to be a like this is your chance game for them because Oregon still has a pretty all right defense. I don't say like a great defense, but it's not a defense to scoff at by any means.
Hmm.
So again, I'm just interested to see if they can move the ball through the air enough to make this a competitive game against Oregon.
Give me Iowa plus the points. I'm
Whoa,
riding. We got one more chance to ride. Give me the ride.
whoa! No, I can't do it. Um, I know you're riding with Mark, and that so it'll make me think that every single time I see his name, that meme. But that's regardless. But I can't get there. I'm gonna go with Oregon. I just again I like what they can offer through the air that Iowa can't.
Let's make it a fight. I love that this game is 40 and a half. This game's going to have a lot of my attention. With Texas on a bye
Yeah,
this weekend, I'm just excited to kind of be able to go around. Like last week, the 11 o'clock window, I saw nothing. Like nothing was going on. The
yeah,
YouTube TV incident has really like changed my multi-view ability. Like we got to figure this out, guys. We got to figure
yes.
it out. We only get so many of these weekends a year. I just want to be able to multi-view. But yeah, I'm excited to see Iowa bring the fight to Oregon and Kinnick, and I'm gonna be sprinkling some money line. We almost got the Florida money line, dude. I almost got it. Um, but yep. And then we move on to the final game that I had of note. Ben's got some as well. I threw A&M and Mizzou in here. I know Mizzou is playing with a backup quarterback now. I think we just listen. They deserve to get some love from me. A&M has been phenomenal. They have been the
Yeah,
best SEC team in, you know, by a wide margin enough to me where it's like I think Alabama has had their moments and you have a moment against wasn't it against Georgia? They didn't score in the second half. Alabama did,
yeah,
and they struggled against South Carolina. A&M really hasn't tripped up against anybody. You could argue earlier in the season, like with the Auburn game and going into a shootout against Notre Dame, but since then, I feel like this team has just been exactly as advertised. They've been dominant, and Mizzou is playing with a backup quarterback, and yet we have a rat line, only a touchdown, similar to the LSU game where it was like a field goal. This isn't Death Valley at night, though, Ben. This is Mizzou in the early afternoon. So, what do you think about this one?
Big, yeah, big difference between Death Valley at night and Mizzou at 2:30. No offense to the Mizzou Tiger fans out there, but there really is the big difference there. That being said, again, everyone wants to kind of stray away from Mizzou because Bo is out. Uh, but I think it's important to give flowers and credit where it is due. Uh, Zollers looked fine. He looked just
Mm-hmm.
fine. I mean, he didn't do anything that was like, wow, that's
He just
impressive.
didn't finish
but
drives against Vandy.
yeah, yeah, that's that's the big thing, which you're gonna have to do when playing against a team like Texas Tech that can score basically at will at this point. But he's looked fine. He looked better than what I would have thought. Better than I would have ever thought for him. Again, 20 of 29, 213 yards, didn't throw an interception, had 2 touchdowns, played like a backup quarterback in the SEC. Again, better than what I thought, and the fact that he was able to stray away from turnovers, I think, was a very big benefit for them. But I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think A&M is, at least as of right now, the clear best team in the SEC, and I think this is just going to be another game where they're just going to show it, and I am probably going to take A&M to cover the points in this game. That's how confident I kind of feel. I just think, again, this, as I said, offense can run away with points at any time with Reeds and KCC and Mario and all of them. It just, again, scoring points at will for them.
Yeah, I mean, just seeing a team hit on portal receivers the way that they did this year. And I know Emmett Mosley is coming along for Texas. It hurts, man, because there was a real like desire from me to to get Concepcion in Austin because I just think he is one of those transcendent players, and A&M is reaping those rewards right now. I'm going to take Mizzou plus the points. Again, I don't know. This is probably me just straying into the line. I think this should be like 9.5. So I'm going to steer right into Mizzou and say Vegas knows more than me. This opened at 5. This opened at like a flat 5 points.
Oh, wow.
And so for it all the way bet up to 6.5, I think a lot of people are thinking like you and I, where it's like, well, clearly A&M's the better team, and Mizzou's playing with a backup quarterback, and this isn't a night environment, and even Mizzou's going under a stadium transformation, like all these factors, and that's how you get Ahmad Hardy to have a 75-yard carry to open the game, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, fighting
Nope.
uphill battle. But
Yes.
yeah, those are the ones from me. Oh, and one more little touch on Tulane and Memphis. Tulane and Memphis is this Friday. Is this the last swing from John Summerall before he takes the Auburn job? We'll see. But because that's just everybody is, and even I was like, this is probably the Summerall place, and then it's like every big name in college football media is like, yeah, Summerall's probably going to go to Auburn. I'm like, oh shit, I wasn't even original.
Yeah, exactly. Again, this Tulane has a chance to again continue to play spoiler, as we said, and really make this group of 5 team.
Well, they still have
a very
they
interesting
still
place in conversation.
they still have one loss in the American, right? Yeah, they do. So
Yeah,
Tulane still got everything in front of them.
yeah. Again, it just goes back to there still being a lot in the air, especially if Memphis loses this game. Again, it can swing a whole lot of things in terms of who this group of 5 team ends up being. So, in terms of 2 other games, I don't have a fancy little button. I didn't plan it out the way that Matt had. But 2 games I think are just worth note here before we can kind of wrap it up. Um, IU, go Hoosiers, baby. They play at the 11 to noon slate, depending on obviously what time
Big
zone.
noon.
Big noon. But they go and play in Beaver Stadium. University Park continues to be, despite Penn State being bad, one of the tougher places in all of college football to play. And Penn State, at least from the opening of that OSU game, made it a little difficult. It was a little bit closer than what I thought. Again, their quarterback doesn't have a lot to offer. I'm gonna butcher his last name. I don't know if you can help me here. Ethan Grunkmeyer, I think is how you pronounce that.
Yeah, he killed it.
Um, there we go. He continues to just absolutely have like a turnover problem. The kid already has 3 interceptions. I think that's a place that IU can kind of capitalize. But I think it's important that IU doesn't look past this game. I mean, Sig doesn't let his team look past anyone. For him again, it's so that
The way he was talking up Maryland,
I know. God, I love that guy. But I mean, this has a slight chance of possibility of Penn State really being able to maybe make some Hoosier fans and me specifically kind of hold my breath a little bit with this run game. Again, I think if IU's offense is able to put up the points that we've come accustomed to over the last 5 weeks, I don't really think there's a chance because I don't think Penn State can pass the ball through the air. I think they struggled with it even with Aller there. And now that it's Gronkmeyer, it's going to be even harder. But again, don't overlook him. It's a Big Ten opponent. You're playing at Beaver Stadium, which is a hard place. So again, just don't overlook them. A game to kind of just keep in the corner of your eye to watch with some funny things that might happen in college football. And then the other game that I thought was worth mentioning is all the way at the nightcap at 7:30, and that's LSU versus Alabama. I think Bama wins this game, but again, you never know. There's a chance that why am I blanking on his name? Nussmeyer and this offense can really just push Alabama and say we are going to boat race you. Buckle up.
Really? Whoa.
I think there's a chance. I still
the vibes are back.
The vibes are. I don't know if the vibes are back. There's a possibility that the vibes are back. This is one of those teams that it's going to be hard for me to quit. But I think they have a chance. I don't want to say to play spoiler because, again, everything is still in front of Alabama, but have a chance to make at least the first round buys a little bit more interesting if they can get this passing attack going and forcing Alabama to really put up points, which might not be super hard, but still something, again, to keep your eye on. We'll kind of see how it plays out. A week ago, I would have also said Navy, Notre Dame, go midshipmen, but really their chances are out the window at this point with that loss against North Texas. But
yeah,
oh well. I was hoping
that was a killer. I'll get into some notables. Friday night is a fun slate. I think you got 3 games on Friday night that I think you're going to get some pretty decent football, some fun storylines. Georgia going into Stark Vegas. Believe me, it's a tough place to play. And Georgia, who can't really generate a pass rush. Like I'm just every time I'm watching them, I'm just interested because I think they're gonna get clipped at some point. I feel like it's gonna happen. If it doesn't happen this week, it will most certainly happen next week. SMU Boston College 11. SMU's favored by 11.5, and with Washington at Wisconsin, they're also favored by 11.5. I think Wisconsin and BC are just terrible. So I'm just looking at some lines here, and I'm like, yeah, I would sprinkle some cheddar on SMU and Washington to beat terrible teams who feel like they're dead men walking. then we get into like, can Miami, like Miami is a 4 touchdown favorite once again. So it's like, oh, bounce back week for Miami. Let's
Uh,
go, baby. Um, Vandy is against Auburn, who we haven't talked about on this podcast. Auburn fired Hugh Freeze. We learned that through his tea time, which was under his wife's name. If you're a college football fan, you know all about that. If you're not and you're kind of new, don't ask. This is what we do around here. We look up SEC coaches' tea times. And outside of that, actually, Florida State and Clemson are playing this weekend. If Clemson if Clemson doesn't win this game, I don't think they make a bowl, Ben.
no, no.
I don't think they make a bowl if they don't win this game, and I don't think it's going to get as contentious as the Brian Kelly and see him lose his job. But Dabo, you're on thin ice, dude. You're walking on thin ice. Like, you're gonna have to commit to the transfer portal. Oh, UCLA is favored against Nebraska, 8 o'clock, because of the Raiola news. So that's interesting. There you go. In the Rose Bowl, and then finally at 10 o'clock, we mentioned them all the way in the rankings. San Diego State on the road in Hawaii. Hawaii is not too terrible. They're already a bowl team at 6-3. So San Diego State favored by 7. They've been awesome this season in covering against the spread. So we'll see if they continue that and continue to be the Mountain West / hope for making the playoffs in back-to-back seasons. So that is all for the notables. Ben, is there anything on the way out we need to know?
Yeah, I mean nothing too crazy on the way out. Really quickly before I get to closing thoughts statements here. College basketball is back again. You guys are here for college football, but just another fun thing to talk about. You won't ever hear us talk about it, but just thought that was worth mentioning, especially considering Boise State lost to Hawaii Pacific, a D2 school. But anyways, it's fun. Just a little fun thing to fill in your time. But again, not a whole lot. Again, we continue to thank you guys for the support that you guys show,
Yep.
especially over there on the YouTube with those recaps and whatnot. Thank you guys so much. It is a great feeling to see stuff continue to grow. And again, we will be back at it this time tomorrow, 9:30, discussing what was a very hectic, crazy, shocking trade deadline. Very hard to not talk about this stuff here, but if you want to hear our thoughts, you will just have to wait until tomorrow at 9:30, as we do. But Matt, you got anything else before I close this out?
I'll make this a little Texas propaganda. Don't let them get in. If you, for all that is, for all the love of holy, like, if you're a team that's sitting there, like, don't let them get in. I'm very confident in this Texas team after the last few weeks. I think being able to dine in hell itself against Mississippi State in the fourth quarter and get out alive and then beat Vandy, I think Kirby and Mike Elko, you guys got a chance to kind of knock them out. Make sure you do it. You got a chance here, because if you don't, this might be one of the best teams in the country playing right now. So.
Could be. Again, long season left, a lot of shakeup to happen. But again, we'll talk more about it next week at 9 Central, 8 Eastern. And as always, thank you to our sponsors, Regional Radio Sports, Spotify for podcasters, and Regional Radio Sports. And again, we will see you guys next week.